And again, I'm going to welcome everyone officially to our meeting this morning on the 24th of January of 2021. Happy New Year again. Still belated Happy New Year for those who are joining for the first time. Thanks for all of our friends and old friends, new friends. We have some old friends joining us today. And if you are new to our meeting, welcome to our Sunrise Spirit Society
Spirit
of
Society of
Texas.
Texas,
And
and
there's a little
there's a
bit of
little bit of
echo, so
echo,
I'm
so
going
I'm
to
going to
take the liberty to
liberty to
mute some of the mics. Thank you. Um, and today it's a very happy morning here. We are very glad we have some good friends from Florida joining us this morning. So first of all, thank you, Andreia Marshall, from being here with us. It's with immense joy that we collaborate. So it's great. Always been great to see the Spiritist movement working together in the United States, and this is just one more token of that great collaboration that we have, and uh, a moment of joy because as we work together in this journey, we make friends, we make great friends, and it's always great to have the friends join us again. Someone is having sound problems. I would, if you can, someone can use the chat and just indicate that they may have to connect again or connect via a cell phone if they are having problems. That occasionally happens. Um, so let me then do a few things here. So today we have our youth joining us together for the main session, as we have this topic that's very interesting, the Exiled Spirits from Capella. Again, our great friend Andreia Marshall from Florida is going to be here with us covering this for the very young, not so young, and young in general. We're going to have Antulio in a moment do our initial prayer, and I'm not going to forget that Antulio this time. So I've made a clear note to myself. I've done that in the past, not doing it again, and I will. And then we're going to go through the talk with Andreia for about 40 minutes. We're going to have an opportunity to do Q&A. Everyone, you can use the chat. Uh, some of our youth students who are here with us today, we're very glad we have our youth educators here with us as well. So again, we have Patty, we have um, sorry here, in a number of our youth educators. I'm sure I'm going to have Elaine, and I'm sure I'm going to miss names, so you're going to have to forgive me. But we have the entire team here, which is really great. So thanks everyone for being here. And then once we go through that and we go through the Q&A, and you can use the chat, we're going to collect, questions. Andreia already anticipated some of them, but we can have new questions. We're going to pause at the about 40-minute mark. We're going to go through the questions, and then we're going to move after that to our final prayer. Tatiani is going to do the prayer, and then Claudinha will do the final, um, announcements that we normally do. Without further ado, it's my pleasure and an honor to introduce, before I pass to Antulio, I want to introduce Andreia Marshall Netto. And Andreia is a very good friend from many years working together in Florida, director of the Leal Publisher and Fab Publisher in the translation of titles as well as its distribution and overall marketing. We're going to talk a little bit about books at the end and the work that Andreia and our good friends in Florida do for us. She is also the director of communications for the Spiritist Federation of Florida and the secretary of the board of the Conscious Living Spirits Group. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us. I'm going to pass on to Antulio before I pass the mic to you, Andrea. So, Antulio, if you could lead us in the initial prayer, please.
Once more, good morning, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. Well, if you wish, let's close our eyes and let's connect with the positive energy around us, leaving behind our worries that have been with us till this moment. Let's open our hearts and minds to this opportunity of study and learning in order we can make the best use of the teachings of the Spiritist doctrine and the example of our Master Jesus. Now let's involve our guest that kindly accepted to be here today with us, Andreia Marshall Netto, in our best thoughts, asking permission to God our Father, Jesus our Master, and the spiritual mentors of this work to start our study of today, saying, so be it.
So be it. You're on mute, Andrea. I'll pass the mic to you. Welcome again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edu. Thank you so much, everybody from the Sunrise Spirits Society, for this invitation to be here this morning and to talk about this really cool topic, really, if you consider it. I know some of you have read the book Exilados de Capella, The Exiled Spirits from Capella. I'm not sure if that book is yet available in English, but we do have a lot of information in the book On the Way to the Light by the Spirit Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier. And we also really recommend the book Genesis by Allan Kardec, a book that is often forgotten and really not studied. And it's such a precious book. So this is the recommendation that we have for you guys and the source of study that we used to be able to bring some of the reflections today. We received 6 questions from the youth between yesterday and today, and we've incorporated them into our study today. Edu, I put on my clock so you don't have to be concerned about the time. And very, very good questions. I mean, there was one question that I was like, my goodness, how am I going to answer this? So we're going to do the best to be able to answer some of the questions that the youth sent us. And I need to applaud also Elaine for the work that she's doing, because if these young minds have come up with these questions, I think she's really doing a great job in getting them to think about really important matters, specifically about today and the times that we are living under. I have my chat open here, so I will do also my best to look at that. If any questions come up that I'm able to incorporate during this study, I will do so. If not, we'll leave it to the end, and it will be the one fishing the questions to bring us. But basically, I'm going to start here with reflecting about our current world and basically ask you, if you ever look around the current state of our planet today and think, if we are in a chaotic state, right? Some people have said that they feel that there is disorder, that things are truly out of control, that violence is taking over. We see a lot of movements of hatred, of prejudice, of misunderstandings. And so it is very natural that one might think that indeed the world is out of control. Things are not orderly. But it's important for us to take a step back from the storm, if you will, symbolically speaking. Take shelter in a safe place so that we can observe what is happening and see how we can participate in making things better. It's quite amazing, right? If you think about the pandemic and how it has hit our planet, our globe, it's something that happened all over. And it wasn't just secluded to one area, it was an all over type of movement. And all of us were basically sent to timeout, right? We were called upon to distance ourselves, to be home, and not only to be home, to be with our immediate family, something that is also very important today. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Perhaps this idea of being isolated at home with our family members is basically what we just mentioned, stepping out of the storm and observe it inside of our home, taking shelter within, not only physically in our own space where we live, but also inside of ourselves. The youth sent some pretty good questions, and I'm going to assume that you guys are so mature that you know exactly what I'm talking about and even more. And this is where we're going to come in and talk about how important it is to take a step back and think about our globe. Emmanuel, in this book that we have just mentioned, On the Way to the Light, it's also available in ebook. If you are an avid iPad reader and you have your book application or Kindle, it's available also for you to read. He starts off by saying the following. He says, the traditions of the spirit world say that in the governance of all the phenomena of our system, there is a community of pure spirits chosen by the Supreme Lord of the universe, whose hands hold the guiding reins of the life of all planetary collectivity. Boom, drop the mic. That's enough, right? Let's break down this paragraph and think about this to step away from the idea that everything is out of control. Let's dive into this paragraph, which is so meaningful. They tell us that there is a community of pure spirits, whose Jesus is only one of this supreme, angelic, pure being who make up this community of pure spirits, chosen by the Supreme Lord. And here he's talking about God. So it's as if God said, hey, Leo, Hadad, you're chosen. Go. This is basically what Emmanuel is saying. Whose hand hold the guiding reins of all life of the planetary collectivities. So when we think that everything is not under control, that it's chaotic, that is completely out of whack, we must remember this paragraph right here. Because Emmanuel is basically stating to us that it doesn't matter what phase our world is in. And here, of course, we're talking about our planet for now, because we don't have recollections of any others that we might have been participating in. Even if we did come from Capella, and this is something that we are going to address later on, basically he's saying, hey, everything is under control. We are talking about the law of progress. We're talking about a planet that is actually also under that law, physically and also morally, by the quality of those who inhabit the planet. Which also makes us think about ourselves, right? What kind of resident am I on planet Earth? Am I a rowdy one? Am I a chaotic one? Or am I one who's trying to promote peace, to promote wholesome ideas, to promote progress by utilizing my intelligence to come up with noble solutions? So we have right now connected about 57 people is what I think I see here. Some of us here have already reached an age where we are in our mid-30s, mid-40s. Of course, I'm not talking about me. I'm still in my mid-20s, right, Edu?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not there yet. But then we have some of the youth participating. And when I look at the youth, basically looking for information in Spiritism, it makes me so happy because I was 13 when I was introduced to Spiritism. Right here in America. I had no idea about Spiritism in Brazil. This is something that by chance I came across when I was 13. But there is such a difference between the mentality of a 13-year-old back then, right? I'm 42 today. There is such a difference and so much has happened. And then we see someone who's 13, 14, 15 utilizing Spiritism to build their lives. And let me say something. If we are smart enough to see it, we are going to realize Spiritism is truly empowering. It empowers us, basically saying, you are the architect of your life and you can build a better world. And we come equipped with everything in order to do so. But enough about that. We are here to talk about Capella, right? This is what we want to talk about, the exiled spirits from Capella. So let's dive into the very first question that was brought to us. I'm not going to mention names just in case the youth doesn't feel comfortable, but if you are, I'm going to leave a few seconds in silent in case you want to get out of the mute and say, hey, that was my question. Feel free to do so. If you're free not to do so. But one of the questions that was brought to us is whether Capella is also known as the goat star. And it is. It's called the goat. The astrological charts is going to show us that astronomers have been studying and they will be able to observe this star that shines bright. As a matter of fact, they say that it is so large, that if we put the sun beside it, excuse me, if you put the sun beside it, it's but a speck compared to the size of the star. And they will tell us here that nearly all of the worlds that are dependent on Capella have already been purified, both physically and morally, in comparison with our backward moral state right now. And why do I say that? It's not to put anybody down, but it's basically, Emmanuel will state that one of the qualities that is actually introduces a planet as being backward has to do with how often we will march to the sound of the war, right? Whether it's in a big scale, whether it's in a small scale, even inside homes, there are tiny wars that actually break out. They talk about the fact that the two qualities that we lack is the quality of compassion, fraternity, also charity, and how little we do to be able to rid ourselves from the aspect of selfishness. So here they introduces Capella, a magnificent sun among the stars closest to the earth. Capella is accompanied by its family of worlds. Based on the regular distance between Capella and our planet, its light takes about 42 years to reach the earth, traveling at approximately 300,000 kilometers per second through space. So here's something that makes us wish to go out, take our Sky app and put it up there to see if we can find it. And it actually makes us look up and wonder about our universe and about the fact that Earth is not at its center and that we are not the only ones that are populating this vast, immense, inconceivable in size and dimension universe that we have before us. So it's really cool, right? If you're like me, I follow NASA on Instagram. I love the photos that they post because it does just that for me. It makes me wonder. And here is where it gets really cool, because it wasn't by chance that the information about Capella or the exiled spirits from Capella came to be. None of the informations that are brought by the spirit world to us through the solid hands of mediums that are committed to the propagation of spiritism free of charge, none of the information that comes is done by chance. There is a reason behind it. There is a useful purpose for every information that we receive. And it is up to us to make use of that information or not. So basically, here is where we are going to ask you on the information that we are going to bring us. Is history repeating itself? It's a question that we are going to be able to answer later on, because Emmanuel will tell us that many thousands of years ago, one of Capella's planets, right? We talk about how there were many planets that are dependent on the star. So one of them, which resembled Earth in many ways, today reached the culmination of one of its extraordinary evolutionary cycles. It reached the peak. It needed to go forward. It's basically stating, take a look at where you are today. And mind you, this book was released 83 years ago. right? So we've come a little while from that. We've already evolved a little bit from that, but not that much. But they're basically saying, take a look at your planet right now and be aware of what I am about to say. So Emmanuel will say that the final struggles of a long perfecting process, because it's part of the progress, a long perfecting process, gradual, if you will, were being finalized. Just as it is now happening with our planet regarding the anticipation of the transition. We've heard so much about planetary transition. There is a book called Planetary Transition that we highly recommend the reading of as well. And in our case, the transition from a world of trials and expiations or trials and atonements to a world of regeneration. So basically, they're saying this is what was happening to that one planet from this great star. And then we are going to find why history is repeating itself. Before we read that paragraph, I want you guys to take a look at that image. We see the image of a classroom. We see a child with reading glasses trying to read. And all around that child, we see kids being rowdy, throwing papers, and behind it, a teacher trying to hold down the fort, trying to keep everything under control, and how hard it was because we had this group of kids who were basically making it impossible to hold the class, to have a wholesome moment of learning. Basically, this is the scenario back then. Basically, this is the scenario today. We are going to find the explanation from Emmanuel. He says, several million rebellious spirits were living there on the pathway of general evolution, making it difficult to consolidate the hard-earned gains of those peoples full of compassion and virtue. However, an act of widespread cleansing would banish those rebellious spirits from that humanity that had aligned itself with perpetual harmony for the construction of its lofty endeavors. Let's bring it to modern language, basically saying those rowdy, noisy, rebellious students were creating chaos in that classroom. Let's see that planet as a huge classroom where students of all types of spiritual progress were basically trying to graduate, if you will. Some had already, through its hard work, graduated, had already passed, were already able to go forward, while others had not yet earned the right to do so. We've been there, right? I don't know how it operates today, but I remember that I had a half credit for me to walk with my senior class, and they didn't allow me to. And it was fair. It was fair. It was on mathematics, by the way. I have recurring nightmares and I'm failing math. It's awful. But basically, symbolically speaking, making a comparison of what they're trying to say, it was basically that. So what should they do with those students, with those rebellious spirits who were not aligned with the progress already achieved by those who had worked so hard to get there? Well, they're great spirit communities made up of pure spirits, angelic being, the directors of the cosmos, is how Emmanuel puts it, decided to send those several million rebellious spirits to faraway Earth, where they would learn to accomplish, through great conquest of the soul, the virtues so needed, through pain, through hard work and learning, in the environment that the Earth provided, while at the same time motivating progress of those who are already here, less evolved brothers and sisters. So let's put it into context. Who here loves their iPhone today? Raise your hands. No raising, thanks, Edu. Raise your hand, Edu, somebody, right? You like your technology. You like the comforts that we actually have to offer. Well, basically, imagine that you were taken away from that context and gone to a somewhat primitive place, right? It was awful. Let's think about this. The idea that these exiled spirits of the earth had of the lost paradise, because they brought within their spirit this knowledge, this notion that they left something better behind. This is basically what happened to the exiled spirits on the earth. Let's see what Arthur said. A simple spirited, how can we understand the balance between freedom and order? Really great question. People may have this, but what can we understand from their experience? Let's leave that for later on. Arthur, thank you so much for this great question that you have brought here to us. And so it was at that moment that Emmanuel will say that Jesus received this group of unhappy beings. And what Emmanuel will say, it's as if he embraced them with a wholesome hug. Some people will say, well, then the exiled spirits from Capella were punished, right? It was a punishment. Not so much. It was actually a way for them to understand that not only were they going to grow and advance that which they were not able to catch up at that one planet, but they were also being of service by helping those who were here to evolve. Emmanuel will say that Jesus' compassionate word and wise counsel encouraged them to strengthen themselves by fulfilling the duties of solidarity and love in the work towards self-regeneration. I think that, Arthur, when we see a comment like this by Emmanuel saying that basically the exiled spirits from Capella were going to grow and progress spiritually by fulfilling their duties of solidarity and love in the work towards self-regeneration, is in itself the recipe for that not to happen to us happening here on earth right now. And this is something that a lot of people question. Well, how do I do that? Well, we start at the home, fulfilling our duties of solidarity, starting at the home, understanding what it is that we can do for society, for the betterment of it. Are we promoting peace or are we promoting discord? Let's talk about social media for one moment before we go back to our study. When we take a look at our social media and the power behind it, sometimes I feel like leaving Facebook because I will see people posting something just to actually bring others to vibrate like they do, to resonate the way that they do, with hatred, with accusation. The social media, Facebook, has become the public square from 2,000 years ago. Let's make a comparison where the adulterous woman was brought right before Jesus. And we know what was to be done with adulterers back then, right? The stoning until they died. And so they bring her to Jesus and they say, what will you say we should do? And then Jesus said, those without any sin cast the first stone. So it's as if Facebook has become that public square where people bring others to be shamed, to be judged, to be attacked, without realizing that they too have so much that they need to work on. And this is something that we all know very well. I know what needs to be worked within me. I don't need a dude who is a dear friend and brother to point out those mistakes. He has a lot on his plate to be concerned about rather than be observing me and judging me and telling me what I should or should not do. He can be a friend. He can tell me that he loves me, but that the way that I'm acting is not correct. There is a way that we can actually promote people's growth without the attack, without the violence, without the judgment. And this is basically what we see here when Emmanuel says that Jesus told the exiled spirits that they were to work, fulfilling their duties of solidarity, of compassion, of love in the work of self-regeneration. It's as if he would say, wipe your tears. I know that you're feeling pain for leaving your loved ones behind. But if you do it right, in no time, you will be back to that lost paradise. And he promised them. Emmanuel will state that he promised them his daily collaboration and that eventually he would come personally to earth. And he did. He fulfilled that promise, even though some are still waiting for the coming of Christ, right? So they would reincarnate in the middle of ignorant, primitive races and would remember the paradise that they had lost far off in the sky, which comes to another question that was brought on by one of the youth. Here's the question: do we know anything about how societies may have been like on the planets of the system? Were the people of one planet aware of the existence of other people on other planets at the same star system? Really, really, really great question that we see here. When we read On the Way to the Light, youthful one, I almost said his name, I held back. We find that those fallen and exiled beings, they came together to form four large groups, right? We learned that on the book On the Way to the Light. We learned that on the book Exiled Capella. And we are going to find what they were. Here we have the Aryans, the civilization of Egypt. We see the people of Israel and the castes of India as well. But Emmanuel will say that a large percentage of those rebellious spirits, with many exceptions, were only able to return to their homeland after many centuries of expiatory sufferings. So they brought with them their content, all that made up who they were. I'm getting to the answer really quick, but building up to be able to explain this idea of societies and whether they knew the existence of other people on other planets and the star of Capella in their own system here, right? But one of the things that we are going to find is if they came here and they had this idea deep down of a lost paradise, to me, dear youthful one, it does answer the question that perhaps they did have the idea of the existence of other people, of other planets, just like we have this idea here on planet Earth that in this vast, immense universe, there's life. Not probably, there is life. And we are going to find that Joanna de Angelis states that when we think about the physical world and when we think about the spirit world, we find that there is only one world. They vary in different degrees of vibration in aspect of the matter, of what makes up the planets, the worlds. And so when we see something like this, we find that specifically in the Hindu organization, Emmanuel will say that of all the spirits exiled on the earth who made up those four groups of civilization, the Hindus were the one who actually had the first form on the basis of an organized society. So in the very first question of this youthful here, do we know anything about how societies may have been like on the planets of the system? Perhaps in the very same way that they formed here. Let's take a look and study the Hindu organization. Emmanuel says, of all the spirits exiled on the earth, those that gathered on the banks of the Ganges were the first to form the basis of an organized society. So here's the answer to your question. If we study it, perhaps at Capella, in the world that they belonged to, they also had their own formations of societies, as we see happening here on that specific civilization. Which brings us to question number 3. It's 2 here, but it's 3 because the first one I already answered. This youthful person asks, what are the religions like in Capella? This is a really great question as well. And let's take into mind that we can't answer what it was like in Capella, but we can take an idea, we can have an idea perhaps on how it was by studying how they were here. The spirits who were exiled, how they were here, how they promoted progress in the area in which they were placed under. And Emmanuel will say that of all the spirits exiled on the earth, those who constituted the Egyptian civilization were the ones who stood out the most in the practice of religiousness. Not religions, religiousness. There is a difference between religions and religiousness. The connectivity that one has with God, with the world above, with the benevolent spirits. Right? So they will say that the Egyptians, they had this single desire that animated them, which had to do with laboring devotedly so that they could return home to that splendorous place that they left behind. Emmanuel will say that they longed for the heavens, and this longing alone was the foundation of all of their religious organization. Spirituality at its height over there. If we look at what Emmanuel brought us on the way to the light, we are going to find that they had the notion of the communicability with the dead. They knew about the plurality of the existence of other worlds. So here's a little bit also answering the first question that we just saw before this one here, this idea of other worlds. And they also knew how to solve some of the problems that were basically they were facing. They had also this idea of this secret knowledge. And here we go to question number 4, although it's 3 here. Are the exiled aware of their own existence? When they're on the earth, do they know they're from Capella? I mean, what a great question this is, right? Do they know that they're from Capella? So they will tell us that in all of the hearts dwell the longing to return to the distant world. So perhaps not consciously they knew they were from Capella, but this longing that they had talks about this innate idea and knowledge that, yeah, they knew they were from somewhere else, that Earth wasn't their home, that they were there just for a moment. And they will say that representing one of the most beautiful and advanced civilization from all the time, the expressions of an ancient Egypt disappeared forever. Why? Because they labored so much. They were so devoted to this idea of returning to that lost paradise that they quickly disappeared from our planet. This is something that baffles a lot of people who study about the history of the Egyptian civilization. Here's something that we can study and see our own history, right? Emmanuel will say, after having perpetuated their more advanced knowledge in the pyramids, all of the spirits of the African region went back to Capella. Just a side note, today, Capella is a happy world. And while some who were in the Egyptian colony civilization went back to Capella, others actually accepted the mission of reincarnating on the earth many times to assist us. Isn't this cool? This is a true meaning of solidarity and fraternity. To be able that you have so much to give. And this is the key to understanding how we can evolve. We all have so much to give. And we're not talking about physical, materialistic things. We're talking about things of the heart and of the soul. If we look today, we see a lot of people masking happiness, this idea that they have it all figured out. But really, isn't it true that a lot of us know that that is something that is not quite true? And this idea that we don't have it all figured out affects people a lot. We know that, especially between the teenagers, you guys see this, a lot of people contemplating suicide, a lot of people thinking that they're not worth it. Of course, we open Instagram and you can't post a video without applying a filter, as if to say that imperfection is something bad. In reality, symbolically speaking, we are here to chisel out those imperfections while working on this beautiful final product that we are to be. I'm not being vain here. I'm talking symbolically as we progress. We are all destined to great things. In order to be able to appreciate that, we have to learn from the exiled and look to the future and see how we can labor to reach it, to get there. So another example here about this aspect of religiousness and also their own existence here, Emmanuel will say that the Mahatmas and the Aryan civilization, they created an environment of such spiritual grandeur that even today people will say that foreigners will visit that sacred land of India and they don't leave without feeling in their hearts the most profound impressions of its psychic atmosphere. Which brings me to another point. A lot of people say, I can't change the world that I'm in. But what if I told you that the mind plays such significant role that we are able, in collection with others, to promote such wholesome psychic atmosphere that we are able to modify the world that we live in. There was an experiment, and here's I'm going to ask Edu to make sure he sends it to you guys, that was done here in the United States, where a group of people prayed for a few days. Really, they really took on that experiment and took it to another level to see how their collective prayer during that period of time would have an impact in their place in the society that they lived in. And the crime actually went down. The crime rate actually went down. Edu, write this down so you can send it to the youth and to the adults. It's true. This is science. This is how beautiful we find Spiritism empowering us. And of course, we need to talk about the people of Israel because they were the ones who had the notion of one God, right? This is really important. And a lot of people say maybe this is why Christ chose them.
Okay, a bakery deu essa aqui pra ela. This is so good. Wait. The cake. I'm gonna search for it. Very hard to search it.
All right, Celso Rodriguez. So
Comfy bed.
if,
This is gonna be my bed.
thank you.
Bed. It's my new bed. I know.
Okay, so a lot of people will say this is why Jesus naturally chose to be able to put his lesson for humanity. But Emmanuel will say that not only were there the most faithful in the aspect of religiousness and religion, but also the neediest. They were the ones who were most in need to have Jesus incarnating amongst them to bring the message of consolation to our earth. And here we see also a lot of the information that was brought to us. The great people of Pharaohs, they retained the memory of their dolorous banishment or exile to the dark face of the earth. And then this is why a lot of them had this idea that we can go back and being an animal, right, to regress. And this is something that Spiritism also talks a lot about. You can't reincarnate as a cat or a dog, although they're really cute and fluffy and all, that doesn't happen. Progress is something that needs to be studied, the law of progress, so that we can understand this idea that the great people of Pharaohs had, that because they felt so humiliated and they were pained so great from being banished, from being exiled, that they created a theory of metempsychosis, which is the belief that a human can regress into the body of an animal as the punishments by God. So this is really cool also for us to understand. So here is another question that was brought to us is, what are the animals in Capella like compared to Earth's animals, right? This is a really cool question brought on by this young mind. We can say that perhaps they differ a lot. We know that not only the inhabitants of the planet, but anything that has to do with the intelligent principle, and I'm not going to get into that. This is a whole nother class to talk about organic beings, living beings like plants and animals. They might differ in other planets. It is in accordance with its physical structure. So yeah, perhaps they are different than the ones that we see here. So I really can't answer that question, but I would love to actually have you guys discuss about this and seek other information, such as in the Spiritist magazine, they talk about Jupiter and they talk about the animals that actually are in Jupiter. Edu, here's another homework for you, is to bring the Spiritist magazine and read a little bit about Jupiter as a planet that is more evolved than ours. And here is another question. Aside from El Solar, are there other spirit colonies? Now, this young lady thought that this question had nothing to do with our study today, and I'm so excited that she brought us this question because it has everything to do with our study today. Some of the teenagers talked about mentioning the pandemic and whether this is also part of this moment of transition, and it is part of the transition. Let's start out by bringing this powerful paragraph here contained in the Genesis, Miracles and Predictions According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, in which he starts out the chapter by saying, the time set by God has come, we are told everywhere, in which great events will occur for the regeneration of humankind. Humankind has made incontestable progress. However, they have yet to make charity, fraternity, and solidarity reign among them in order to assure their moral well-being. Isn't it interesting that they brought charity, fraternity, and solidarity in Genesis according to Spiritism, and also the 3 types of virtues needed on the way to the light were also brought in the dialogue that Jesus held with the exiled of Capella, telling them to fulfill their duties in what had to do with charity, fraternity, and solidarity. So here we have also the recipe and the keys for us to understand what is needed in order for us to actually partake in the transition and inherit the earth. And of course, they talk here about this great events that will occur, and that it is a movement that is actually universal. It's not something that is just local. It's universal. And basically, this is what we have happening today. So how is this have to do with the question posed by this young lady who sent us the question? Well, it has everything to do with it. When the pandemic started, we were told by Divaldo Franco, who is that medium, that a sound played out in different colonies in the spirit plane, announcing what was to come with the pandemic. And this happened in September of 2019. This is really important for us to understand, because her question talks about, aside from Non Solar, are there other spirit colonies? There are. There are spirit colonies spread throughout our globe in the assistance of the spirits who are discarnating collectively, especially, we're talking about the pandemic, let's talk about this, throughout the whole world, and also due to other things. One of the signs of times that we see that we are transitioning is sometimes how it does happen. We see the discarnation collectively in great numbers, as we see happening today. So there are other colonies. One of the name of the colonies that I remember is the transitory home of Fabiano de Cristo, which is found in one of the books by Andrew Lewis. And I'm sorry, I don't recall the name of the book right now, but I'll be sure to send this information. And Edu, here's another homework for you to remind me of. And so the reason I'm bringing this is because the new book that was just launched, No Rumo do Mundo de Regeneração, On the Way to a World of Regeneration, which is being translated into English pretty soon. We will have this book available in English. We have information that sets out, that says that Ismael, the spirit guide, the one who is responsible for Brazil, brought a message that basically was promoted, was shared in virtually every nation of the planet, who held similar meeting in the spirit plane to talk about the COVID, to reach out guides, leaders from those countries, and we're talking about this communication from the higher spheres to the leaders of the countries to know how to deal with what's happening. So in the book, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, the Spirit, states the following. He says, naturally, within their own time zones, in virtually every nation on the planet, a similar meeting was taking place. And dear young one who asked that question, it took place in different colonies, in different places, okay? From the Excelsius vibrational planes, Jesus sent his messengers to warn humankind and to declare the definitive evolutionary changes about to happen to the planet. As such, the spirit guides of each country will expound what is foreseen in the future days regarding the inevitable transformation that has been occurring at a slower pace so far, but now needs to be accelerated. And I'm going to share some of the message. I know we are 2 minutes past the but we are coming to the end of it, in which he stated, Undoubtedly, what has been established will come to pass, and those who prefer chaos will be exiled to similar but inferior worlds. I'm not reading Exiled from Capella. I'm reading the message that was given by the Spirit author at the end of last year. So just a couple of months ago, okay? Undoubtedly, what has been established will come to pass, and those who prefer chaos will be exiled to similar but inferior worlds, where they will feel unconceivable moral anguishes, longing for the beloved earth and the affections they have disrespected. Seeing in the distance the generous mother floating in luminous spaces, those banished from it will bitterly weep in the primitive orbs to which they were exiled. Is this very familiar history repeating itself indeed? He continues, the COVID-19 pandemic that afflicts many countries is accompanied by a more cruel one, which is the crime committed by contemptible authorities who take advantage of the moment, amassing deceptive power and wealth over the misery of thousands of victims of the infamous circumstances they created and continue to maintain. We are called to intervene in every possible in the prospects of war and harmful thoughts, in criminal decisions and people's desires for uprisings, inspiring brothers and sisters, helping them with the possibilities at our reach. And they give us the recipe and final solution. Only love will have the power to triumph over the maddening battles masterminded on the earth. Wherever love, charity, and compassion thrive, the Heavenly Father will be present and set the course for the glory and peace meant for all. It's very meaningful, right? And when we see something coming like this, we know that the time has come for us to take it seriously, to partake in the betterment of our world in a way that we know that individually but collectively we are able to make a difference. And we know that only love is going to be that driving force that will allow us to inherit our earth and partake in a moment of transition. We are in the VIP area of the transition of the planet. We can either partake in it proactively, or we can sit back and watch, and then later on also be like those exiled from Capella and weep, longing for the idea of the earth we have left behind, and knowing that only through work and the efforts that we'll make, we'll be able to go back to the beloved blue planet that we love so much. Hopefully, we will not miss a beat and be part of that and helping our brothers and sisters to get there as well. Solidarity, fraternity, and charity. Love is the only solution.
Thank you, Andrea, so much for bringing this enlightening, clear, inspiring message to all of us, and especially to our youth, first of all. Second, thank you to our youth for having sent the great questions that you addressed. It's always impressive. It makes us humble to see how curious and intelligent they are. Um, and thank you again, Patty, Elaine, and I know I'm going to forget everybody else who is helping, Livia, Cristina, Gustavo, Adenetti, all of our, and Tulio, all that have been leading. Patty leads our youth education with the great help of all those workers that I've named. So thank you for being here. Thank you for working here with us, and thank you, Lucas, Pedro, Douglas, Sophia, William. If I forget anyone, all of those brave youth, in curious minds who have asked the questions. We have a few minutes here, only maybe 6 or 7 minutes for additional questions. So I try to summarize as best as possible here the questions. If we have already answered them, you can skip, Andrea. And if not, if there's no answer, we'll follow up. And if there's an answer, please. So quickly here, Artur, thank you, Artur, for the questions. Send us a question about, how can we as spirits who are simple and ignorant understand the balance between freedom and order, Capella people may have faced this, but what can we understand from their experiences? How can we define the understanding of freedom versus chaos versus order versus dictatorship and oppression?
Very great question. Arthur, I'm going to give it back to Edu. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's a really good question because we were created simple and ignorant, right? But we have already reached a position in a world of trials and expiation, transitioning to a world of regeneration, where we are able to understand that our free will certainly have an impact. Every action has a reaction. Every cause will have an effect there. And I'm going to divert you to question 780 of the Spirit's book to answer that further, because I know we are almost out of time here. But we are able to discern between that because deep down inside, my friend, we also have the divine laws imprinted in our conscience. We have that voice that tells us when something is not right, when something is not correct. And so, of course, we are going to make mistakes. Of course, we are going to have those learning experiences that is going to tell us between what is right and what is wrong when we face those consequences. But this is why the book from the Exiled from Capella is so important, because they're basically giving us the recipe. They were not aligned with the overall movement of moral progress that had to do with being charitable, which had to do with fraternity, we had to do with solidarity, we had to do with love and action. And we have already the recipe for that, and we are able to discern between what is right and what is wrong. What we need to do is stop acting in impulses and start thinking more before we act. So it's not reacting, it's acting. We are going to act in accordance with the situation by taking a step back and being proactive in the way that we react to certain things that is posed before us, whether in our personal relationship, whether it's on social media, whatever the case may be. Sometimes I feel like posting things on Facebook and I feel my spirit guide, my mentor holding my hand back and say, don't do it, don't do it. And you don't, we hear it, we hear those voices. So get in contact also with your mentor, with the one who has been entrusted to take care of you, which is our guardian angel, if we want to call it that way, our spirit guide, our benevolent spirit, who are there to help us, to guide us, to warn us, to embrace us, to console us, but always to enlighten us. So we will know the difference.
Thank you. Question from our Patricia Williams. Is Capella recognized by NASA or science or only by Spiritism?
Yep, recognized by NASA, astronomers who study about it, it's really recognized, not just Spiritism. But it's really great that Spiritism comes and gives us a truly solid example so that we can say, wow, perhaps I'm part of that civilization. By the way, some of the people from Capella, the Exiled, are still here today. They're not the ones who graduated and were told that they could go back to that world from Capella that is now happy, which is the fourth, by the way, classification of planet. They actually are still here because they're still hardened, they're still rebellious, and they're still enabled to march to the tunes of progress. So hopefully, they will not repeat and be exiled again to another inferior world. Maybe by then they will have learned their lesson. So yeah, it's really cool that Spiritism brings something very solid for us to utilize for our own experiences and learning experiences so that we can progress.
Thank you. Question from Sophia, one of our youth. So the second graders, and those would be the exiled from Capella, couldn't graduate because they weren't doing their homework, paying attention in class, so they were exiled from the classroom and forced down to preschool, where they were supposed to help the preschoolers, who are us on Earth, get to kindergarten and first grade. Is this basically what happened?
Yeah, basically the idea that we try. I love Sophia. Thank you for putting it so plainly. Very cool. That's basically it.
Good. Question from Artur. So we normally reincarnate without remembering our previous experiences, so we can learn better. So were the Capella people allowed to incarnate on Earth and remember their previous experience and information?
Arthur, great question. So because they brought this innate idea of this far-off land, of this lost paradise that they had, Much like we do reincarnate with some guiding roles, if you will. Like if we pay attention to who we are today, we can have an idea of who we were, right? Let's not like in details, but we can have an idea of what is still holding us back, of what brought us to where we are today, of why we've reincarnated with the family members that we have. If I am, let's utilize here for an example, Eduardo and I are siblings in the same family, but I just can't get along with him. There's something about him that makes me want to smack him all the time. It tells me that it is there that I need to work on. It is there that I need to develop wholesome feelings towards him. Maybe he's not my enemy. Maybe I am the one who erred in the past with him. So it's not about him and his progress, it's mine. So we will bring some collective thoughts about things that needs to be done, because we will be assisted throughout our entire life. We are aligned in prayer, meditation, wholesome readings, so that our spirit guides can offer us some helping hand. If we are someone who's completely, what example can I use here? You know, somebody who is very concerned about their looks, right? And they're constantly looking for ways to better their face through, you know, constant, let's say, plastic surgery, right? It's never enough. There's something there. I'm looking at in the mirror and I'm still not seeing what I want. So it's not a reflection of me physically, but it's a reflection of me spiritually. So it's something that I'm still not liking. If we look within, we find what it is that we need assistance on moving on from. Just be careful not to be self-punitive or putting oneself down or falling into this idea of inferior being. None of that is real, okay? We are all imperfect on the earth, all of us here. We are all walking, making an effort to progress. So there are things that we can work on with the assistance of psychologists, of psychiatrists. The spiritist philosophy body of knowledge also helps us a lot in discovering who we are, and not only discovering who we are, but embracing our qualities so that we can actually battle the vices, if you will, that we still need to work on and that we need to diminish to be able to evolve. That's not to say that if we are not perfect today, we are not going to transition. That's not it at all. It's the active effort that we make to control our negative tendencies, our negative inclinations. That's what this is about. It's about overcoming oneself, and we all have the ability to do that. Forgetting the past is good. Forgetting some of the details from the previous existence is good, because if we had access to that, it could actually be something that would hold us really behind and fall into sometimes the aspect of guilt, of remorse that is not productive. That's not proactive. So when we reincarnated, we had this planning around, not in details, of course, because then we're talking about determinism, but it's not about that, but the genre of trials, of tests that we would go through so that we could overcome the things that held us before in a previous existence.
Thank you, Andrea. And because of the time, I'm going to ask one last question, and I apologize for those whose questions we couldn't get to, and thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We'll try our best to follow up. So the last question, which is going to serve as a homework for us, is a question from Valmar Rodriguez. Which other books can we read to learn more about Capella or other exiles?
Well, On the Way to the Light is one that we can read in depth. A lot of the information of all of the 4 groups that formed. There's a lot of information about that. And it's not about the exile, but I would really suggest reading the chapter from Genesis, The Signs of Time, or The Time Has Arrived, that talks about this moment of transition, talks about also the new generation versus the ones that are being, I wouldn't say banished, but who are being invited to go to other orbs that are not aligned with the spiritist, are not aligned with the spiritual virtues and so on. It's chapter 18. My helper here is helping me out. Chapter 18 of Genesis, Miracles and Predictions According to Spiritism.
Thank you very much again.
And Planetary Transition is also really good to read by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrea, one more time. We are out of time now, so I am going to ask our dear friend Tatiani to conduct us in the final prayer, and then Claudinha will give us the final, announcements. Thank you so much.
All right. Dear God, we thank you for this amazing opportunity to learn more about your creation, to learn more about how we can learn and evolve ourselves and do better. May you protect our families, our homes, our country, our cities. May we have a good week of reflection and hopefully applying some of the things we have learned today. We're so grateful for this opportunity. May you be with us. So be it.
Thank you, Tatiani. And Claudinha, on to you.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so I will share my screen now. I know we did in the beginning, but I just want to say thank you to everybody that joined us today for the first time. And now we just have a couple things, final announcements, and then we'll be done. First thing that I would like to bring today is about Fab Publisher, and I have here the website. A Fab Publisher. You can find many books in there in English, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, German, French, and Russian. Many of the books that Andrea told us about, you can find there. And their main purpose is to work towards making the Spiritism well known around the world by ensuring the Spiritist books continue to be the main form of spreading this amazing body of knowledge. And by the way, they're having sale right now. They have books on, and they also have free ebooks, which is, you can download the ebooks for free. So please visit their website, fabpublisher.com. And I would like to invite all of you that are listening to us now on Wednesday, and these meetings are in Portuguese. We have every Wednesday from 7 to 8 through Google Meet, which is the same platform that we're using now to meet. We have reflections on the gospel according to the Spiritism. We reflect and talk about the lessons of the gospel in order to bring comfort and understanding about the challenge that the men face linked to the moral aspect of the life. So if you're interested in being part of these meetings, please contact us, send us an email to communication@sunrisespiritist.org. Now, last, I would like to talk with you guys about the gospel at home. Do you know what is the practice of the gospel in the home? Well, the gospel at home is the weekly study of the gospel of Jesus in the light of the Spiritist doctrine, which enables us to understand Christian teachings and whose practice lead us to moral improvement. Do you practice the gospel in your house? Would you like to start doing it and you don't know how to start? Well, we offer guidance. Or if you have any question, also contact us. We can help implement the gospel at your home. And you can also send us email to communication@sunrisespiritist.org. These notices, they will be posted in our website, also on our Facebook page, and on our Instagram page. So for today, that's it. I hope that our study was able to inspire you and that you have a great week. Thank you again, Andrea, for sharing, this amazing study with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, everyone, and the youth who has been here with us today. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the Sunday and a great week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.